And if your child has had COVID over the summer, please contact your building nurse with that information, as it does impact contact tracing and quarantining. Quarantining is the next slide. Positive cases or close contacts will need to quarantine, but there are now some options to lessen quarantine days. So the standard quarantine is still 14 days from the last contact with the person who was infected. The reduced quarantine options allow for a 10-day quarantine, and that is if the individual is asymptomatic, received a negative PCR test, and from the times of 10 days to 14 days follows distancing of 3 to 6 feet and wears a mask properly. Option 2 allows for a 7-day quarantine. That is for asymptomatic individuals with a negative PCR test after day 7, and then also follows the distancing of 3 to 6 feet. Option 3, which is the test-stay strategy, is strictly used when the close contact is from school transmission. And it can be used only if students are wearing masks. Both positive individual and close contact were masked at the time of exposure, and then this close contact would test on day 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. As long as the close contact remained asymptomatic and we monitored their symptoms, they could remain at school. Later in the presentation, Dr. Silverman is going to talk about the instructional supports for any student that must face a quarantine this year. In District 34, we're so fortunate to have health offices and infirmaries, and such a fabulous health team here at Glenview. Leading that work is Kathleen Lee, our District Health Services Coordinator. Susanna Kopek is our other district nurse. These ladies have been instrumental in helping us through this pandemic and understanding the different medical components. In each of our buildings, we have a licensed nurse, and they will be busy this year as they will be managing the daily responsibilities of the health needs of the students in the building, as well as ensuring any sick child in our infirmaries are well cared for. We also have 2 district health coordinators to support our health offices and to support shield testing. Thanks to this health team, we really had a successful school year last year and anticipate another great year working to keep our students and staff safe as best that they can.
Thank you. Okay. So for lunch and recess, that's our next topic there. The federal programming extends free meals for every student who needs it into the end of the 21-22 school year. So that's something that we were able to take advantage of last year. We'll continue into this school year. For unvaccinated students moving through the food line, we'll continue our social distancing protocols. And then in terms of the facilitation of lunch in general, which typically would be in a cafeteria or gym space, the buildings will determine additional spaces to eat to maintain that 3 feet of social distancing, so it may move into other locations of the building. Of course, promoting healthy habits, hand washing, cleaning, that sort of thing that we would do regardless of the pandemic impact. And then masks do not need to be worn outside, so for recess, which is daily with lunch, that would be a great opportunity for children and staff really to take a mask break. Okay, and transportation. So we know that we will have more riders on our buses by design, and that's certainly what we want. So children will be closer together just by design in comparison to last year. The CDC again mandates that all riders must wear masks on buses. We will keep assigned seats on regular routes. And additional after-school activity buses will allow for distancing. So we'll be adding, first off, it's very exciting to have after-school activities as typical of what we would expect, and then additional after-school routes to maintain that social distancing.
get back so we can talk into the microphone as YouTube's back up.
Okay. So for teaching and learning, we will be engaging in our full-time teaching, our full curriculum for all content areas. Our children will be experiencing their regular or typical school day, all of the opportunities for instruction, for group access, for movement for learning will be in full effect on day one. So that's a key element for our teaching and learning environment. We will re-engage or facilitate our late start Wednesdays for professional development. Teachers will collaborate and plan during that time, and it is every Wednesday throughout the school year. And this was just really a great achievement from the middle school staff, or last year, as we were talking about, the ability to create new opportunities for our children in terms of some curricular and programming experiences. So those are going to come through as a student success class for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade children. And it's really a perfect fit in terms of transitioning full-time, if you will, back into the middle school schedule. And then we've added options for children in the area of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics class at all grade levels. And then, of course, we're calling modern media. So full engagement, full facilitation right out of the gate next week. So while we indeed engage our children in teaching and learning, we need to balance that with our social and emotional supports and growth. So really, as we start the school year and we start to work through our curriculum, our instruction, our standards, all of those key elements, these themes that you see up on the slides are also going to be essential, actually critical in terms of transitions. For some children, it may have been 175 school days since they were last in sort of a traditional in-person school setting, so that will be a key piece. Relationships with their friends, their buddies, even teachers with their colleagues, co-teaching, all of these relationships being reinvigorated. And it's been happening this summer with some staff professional development, and it's really been amazing to see that come to fruition because it was missing out of our lives these last 18 months or so. This sense of belonging is going to kind of carry us into the school year. We've been running these universal themes as we start our school years to sort of coalesce around in terms of supporting our children and supporting each other. And that's what we're going to be striving for with our classrooms. The consistency factor, huge, right? There are no plans today in terms of a hybrid concept or partial in-person, or it's in-person as we know and love it, full-time every day, as Dr. Daly started the presentation. And then again, it's all about balance, and our strategic plan has balance in it when it comes to our academic goals, maintaining our rigor for our children, sustaining our standards-based education, and then the social emotional element that's just a reality for all of us and for our children. Okay, so in terms of academic support for quarantine, we are bringing on for this year a new staff member, a grade center teacher. It's a substitute person because it is the most flexible certified teaching design that we can create for our children that would experience quarantine. So each building has this person available. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian, you want to?
No, I'm good.
Here over there, I looked over and you weren't good.
I'm a little discombobulated with that.
Okay, all right, I just started rattling on here, okay. The second bullet there, so really what our quarantine instructional side is going to be about coordinating the work from the classroom teacher, again, that full-time educational experience that we're going to be providing for our children this year, and then the grade center teacher, the substitute, transitioning, bridging that learning for the child if they're at home in quarantine. So in terms of potential direct instruction, reteaching, reinforcing this person will serve as that connector point between the child in quarantine at home and the classroom. There will also be support provided for our special populations, so our multilingual learners or students with disabilities, and remote learning plans as we did last year. And they're really just an excellent connector again to ensure that we are meeting all the needs of all of our children at any given moment. If they're in quarantine, will be established based on IEPs. And just as a note, instructional support is not provided for travel quarantine, just to point out that difference. All right.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Just get the mic closer because it's hard to hear on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I always feel like I'm yelling.
No, that's good. They can hear it online better when your mouth is right there.
So another new idea, and it's actually connected to the ESSER funding that Dr. Daly mentioned, is this learning lab concept. This idea that we're going to extend the day for children where it's a perfect fit for their learning and for their needs this year in particular, and most likely subsequent years with our federal money. And this will be an opportunity for after school, and you can see kindergarten will adjust that a little bit, for literacy, numeracy, and social emotional skill development. And we're going to do our best to really customize this to match what a child may need, most likely relative to pandemic-induced either learning gaps or challenges they may have experienced in terms of the school year we had last year, which was different for many children. And so you'll see coming online these learning labs. We're looking at starting in October because we really want to use a triangulated matrix or multiple points of data to ensure that we're really zeroing in on children that would most benefit. And we will then layer these labs to rotate children in as the school year progresses to really provide as much support as possible in this after school hour. And again, transportation will be provided, which is really a great piece. So in terms of full-time remote learning, as Dr. Daly mentioned, last year we had our Glenview Online Academy. We're not sustaining that into this year. We're moving away from that. But we are looking at an outside provider for our education for children that would medically qualify, would have a medical qualification with documentation in terms of needing that full-time remote learning. That's what we're talking about here. As of today, we do not have any children who qualify, and there were a large number. Tremendous credit to Mary and Kathleen and the nurses and their team canvassing the documentation, seeking out medical expertise from doctors, and determining the best fit, because again, as Dr. Haley started, we do our best work with our children when they're in our spaces with us, and that's what we're striving for. So we will have this available. The assistant principal for student services will monitor the children. I will be involved in terms of potential placement of children. We will match all the same content area curricula that they would experience during our learning model. And then again, you can see that student service staff will work with families in terms of providing social and emotional support. All right.
So this slide really is just designed by way of reminder that our building level administrative teams, our principals, our assistant principals, and those who support their work have ordinary start of school activities that are always important as we begin a new school year. In addition to that, and as has been mentioned, and I'm just going to go through her quickly, more details about lunchroom schedules and protocols will be forthcoming. Determining the exact contact tracing assignments is work that the principals are doing. Our work with our third-party shield provider is going to evolve over the next couple of weeks. Like I said, that's not something that will be available starting on day one, but we anticipate mid-September. Planning for smooth and safe transitions and communications to parents. We know that parents want to know what the plan is. That's largely the point of this evening. There will be additional and more detailed information that's forthcoming from the district and from individual schools.
And then finally, to help support this plan, federal funding has been made available starting last year with the ESSER 1 CARES Act. The district received $366,000. In FY21, we received partial amount of the ESSER 2 funding at $1.4 million, and now for the next 3 years, the district has access to $3.3 million, and we've listed some of the things specifically that the funding has gone for, but in large part, that funding will go to support much of what you heard about tonight.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the planning team? I did have one question. The learning labs, is that going to add to differentiated individual learning as we move forward? Or is that more of a group-based thing?
So it will depend on numbers of children that will actually engage. We'll certainly identify. The other element is staffing. Right now, we're surveying our staff to see, and again, the variable is using this ESSER money to be able to support staff after hours. So our hope and our design is to keep the learning experience as small, or the ratio from staff to student as small as possible. Some of the programming we would use, even if it was an extension of Tier 1 curriculum, after 4 or 5 children to one teacher, there's a fidelity element, so absolutely that will be a high priority. We need to have staff to be able to do that.
Can I piggyback off that just for 1 second? Since we're talking about learning labs, I wanted to say that I was really glad to hear that that's going to happen. Could we get, is it possible, like mid-year, to get an update on how that's going? So I'd like to hear about how many kids are involved, with the, if it's doing what you're intending it to do, if it needs any improvement. So I'd love to get an update on that.
Does Mike, you have a question?
More comment than a question. Hold that.
Go ahead.
Just want to make sure I'm on the sound. Okay, great. So I just wanted to say, since spring break of 2020, I guess, is when this all started, when we thought we were going to be out for 2 weeks. I just want to thank the staff and administration and the teachers for navigating what has been unprecedented. That word is overused, but I don't know another word for it. Historic, century type thing. We have worked on plans and planned on work and worked on plans and planned on work, and we have adjusted time and time again based on, frankly, in my opinion, very disjointed federal, state, and even county level mandates. I have been so impressed by how your staff, Dr. Deli, and all of the building staffs have been able to continue on the path that we set last summer, which this is just a continuation of the path. I do find myself at times frustrated with parents on social media and other places when they say, we don't know what the plan is. Well, there's always been a plan. You just have to attend these meetings and you'll see the plan. And we have been talking about these items for many, many, many months. And again, I just want to thank the staff for their hard work and the teachers in particular, because it's been such an incredible amount of work that I don't think we can totally appreciate the amount of work that you all have put in the last year and a half. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mike, second that.
Thanks, Diana.
Scott, if I can make a comment quickly.
Can I give Jim a chance? He raised his hand first.
I guess my question is really about for the flexibility of the plan. I think one of the hallmarks of our opening plan last year was that we had a place where we started, but we also felt like we had the flexibility to move and navigate and make changes. You said this, you pointed out at the very beginning as like a single sentence, but I just wanted to either reiterate or just confirm that that's your feeling about how this year will work too. This is what we've described tonight as a starting point, and we will certainly have it evolve over time as Circumstances and risks and new information comes along.
That's absolutely true. We also had the added benefit of having worked through a variety of scenarios in the spring. Now, granted, no one has any interest in going back to adaptive pauses, dual platforms for learning. But having needed to do that has given us, I believe, a lot of wisdom as we move forward and as we need to adapt. It made the toolbox bigger. Doesn't mean that we would reach for the same tool. It just means that, you know, if we need to create a system, we have a lot more tools from which to choose. And I think that's what makes the plan malleable in that sense, that as new information comes out, as guidance changes, we can adapt and not have to go backwards.
Dr. Dolan, do you have any input?
Thank you, Scott. I just want to take a moment and briefly thank my board members, but especially Dr. Deli and the team. The layered mitigation in the plan that's been put forward is taking advantage of platforms and tools and capabilities that we did not have last year. The shield testing as a saliva-based test with high fidelity and sensitivity as a means to disrupt the transmission cycle in closed environments like schools that could also be translatable to workplaces will truly allow us to not just leverage the wisdom of the past, but avoid future scars. It is very true that the risk that this virus holds are unknown, and these efforts, combined with the collaboration of the community, the positive support for our teachers, our administration staff, and the parents in this community to protect our students, will allow us to avoid the deja vu and relive the nightmare that was March 2020 and the 18 months. Regardless of our efforts, we don't want to relive. And so thank you and appreciate all the effort and looking forward to getting all of our students back to schools.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. Does anyone else have anything to discuss?
I'm just going to mention one more thing.
Make sure you get in the mic.
I wanted to decouple this comment from my earlier comments so that they don't get necessarily polluted with each other. I can see the sign in the back, and I'm sure that many of you are here to speak about masks and mask mandates. I'm not thrilled with the governor's decision because if we were at 100% vaccination, we don't have an option. That one mitigation piece has been taken away from us as a board. We don't have a choice in this. So I understand the need to come up and voice opinions about that topic, but it is not optional. So I just wanted to put that into the public domain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I just wanted to make one brief comment. I think, I don't want to speak for my fellow board members, but I sense that we agree about all wanting to have as much normalcy back in the school year as possible. So all the layered mitigations are towards that goal, and it's not trying to place a burden on any one group of people or students or staff or whatever. It's the goal of trying to get as much normalcy and maintaining that as we can.
Right, we want to keep all the kids every day in school.
That is the goal, as Dr. Deli started out with. I believe that was your opening line to the presentation, and I think that is what unites us.
All right, thanks. I think that we'll complete that part of our presentation. And now we're going to be moving to our audience comments section. I first want to welcome everyone to our first YouTube broadcast of our live in-person meetings. Thanks for coming in. Sorry you missed some of it. We lost power because of the storm. So now we'll get forward. This is the first opportunity for audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card, which are available at the check-in table, and give it to the Director of Communications and Strategic Planning. The Director will call community members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship with the district. If a community member in the overflow room wishes to make a comment, they can give their comment card to a D34 staff member on duty in the room. Comments should be 3 minutes or less. We have set aside 45 minutes for comments at this point. Please know that the board will be taking notes, but we will be in listening mode only, and an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We also ask that you submit 1 comment per opportunity. Kathy, how many comments do we have?
7.
7 comments. All right, and I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We always appreciate hearing from you.
We have 8.
8 comments. Okay. Kathy, can you call our first comment?
And yeah, if our speakers could speak into the mic so our folks at home can hear it, that would be great. I'm going to try to remember to do the same. First, Justin Schweig.
This mic right here?
Correct.
Yes, please.
You guys heard me? Hi, my name is Justin Schweig. I have 3 kids in the school district. I have 1 at 225 and 2 at District 34. 1 at Springman and 1 6th grader going into Henry. I'm here today because I'm extremely concerned about the increase of healthy unvaccinated children not only contracting but having horrible symptoms, hospitalizations, and some even on ventilators from this deadly virus. I would like to know why, especially given the new data that District 34 is choosing not to give parents the option of remote learning during this devastating time. And also lessening the safety protocols set in place during last school year, for example, 3 feet instead of 6 feet, only when possible. Our child is just 6 and going into 1st grade thinking she is not currently eligible to get the vaccine yet. She was in the GO program last year because we have 3 in our household that are very high risk for complications. We were told that the shortage of teachers at GO would not be an option. That is understandable. My older daughters, 1 at Springman and 1 at GBS, suggested why not give the parents the remote option like they did for them last year. The technology is already there and the experience, and it would be great. It would be a great and easy way for those who choose to keep their kids at home until they are vaccinated to transition back to in-person learning without skipping a beat or rearranging schedules or teachers and children placement. That way, they can still be engaged in doing the same work as the rest of their class. I'm only talking about the K through 5 group. That's it, just K through 5. Just to clarify, they're not eligible to get vaccinated yet. The voiceless, the amazing kiddos who sacrificed so much to keep their families safe during this horrific, scary time last year. We owe it to them the same respect and protections. I've lived in Glenview for about 17 years, and the reasons are because District 34 has great schools and great teachers. Now I beg you to step up, regardless of politics, and continue to protect our children, if only for a few months until they can get vaccinated. Like I said, you already have the technology and experience, so please give the parents the option to choose a remote learning option and not to have to scramble at the 11th hour to try to find an alternative. To also give the kiddos that choice to stay home and feel a belonging and connection to their teacher, peers, and community that they so need during this time. Please do not turn your backs on the most vulnerable. They are the future. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Next is Karen Lee. Did I say that right?
You did. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. I'm not as eloquent as right here. I'm Karen Lee. I have 2 children at Lyons. 1 is entering kindergarten and 1 is entering 2nd grade. I recognize the efforts that went into last year, and I thoroughly applaud the various needs that you had met over the year, and in my opinion, was incredibly successful. I support the schools to open in person. Many families and children will be in crisis if they were to close again. However, I humbly implore you to please consider other families who would like to have a remote option until their children have been vaccinated. My eldest attended Gold 1st grade last year, and he thrived. We thrived as a family. We hope to have him back in school this year and his brother in kindergarten, but are suddenly reluctant due to the rapidly changing situation caused by the Delta variant. Specifically, our concerns, our children are getting sicker, and specifically long COVID. They don't have to go to the hospital to have lifelong effects from this. I beg that you allow families such as mine to opt into remote learning until the children have been vaccinated. I would love to keep them in this district. I would love them to be seamlessly transitioned back into their classroom with their teachers in person once they are vaccinated. I am not a homeschooler. I am not an educator. And I really don't think I will be successful in that, but I know you will be successful in that. I implore you to please give me the option of remote learning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Jennifer Patel.
Hello, my name is Jen Patel. I'm a parent and a concerned citizen.
Excuse me, can you get closer to the mic just so everyone can hear you on TV?
I want to clearly state 2 points. Number one, I wholly disagree with masking children in school, and I advocate for making masks
Thank you.
It is the duty of this elected board to operate independently in the best interest of the whole community that it serves and without competing interests. Common sense should tell us that masking children is not only detrimental to their health, but also to their educational development. It is clear that conflicting interests at the state level are the driving force behind your decision and not common sense. We know that children have a near 100% survival rate. They are asymptomatic and have virtually no spread. This is consistent with the regular flu system where we do not mask children. Masking is counterintuitive to everything that we know about viruses. Mask wearing is ineffective at preventing the spread of viruses. It causes oxygen loss and carbon dioxide inhalation at 6 times greater the legal limit of dangerous levels. It causes face rashes, respiratory infections, aggravates asthma, creates feelings of anxiety. And worse, it causes developmental delays for elementary-aged children, children with disabilities, the hearing impaired, and ESL students. Despite the clear evidence that masking is ineffective, this school board has already stated in an email yesterday that they are required to follow executive orders of the governor, and that the Illinois State Board of Education could move to revoke the district's recreation status. This statement is evidence that the school board is persuaded by competing interests and has neglected its duty to the taxpayers in the community from which it receives 90% of its funding. The IEMAA expressly states that the governor is not unilaterally permitted to create new regulations, and therefore his mandates are not legally binding. Consequently, the ISBE cannot strip a school's recognition for ignoring a non-legally binding mandate from the governor. School districts across the state of Illinois are voting in favor of making masks optional without fear of penalty. You have choices. If they can do it, so can you. Adopting this mandate without challenge is lazy, and it demonstrates that the board is not advocating for our kids. The governor's office stated in July that local school boards will have the final say on wearing masks. That decision has not been reversed. The school board is a local government and should act as such. Lastly, it is the parents' exclusive right to determine the health and safety of their children. Mask mandates are a huge governmental overreach, not only by the state, but also by the school board. I implore you, as elected members of the school board, to make the right decision and vote for freedom of choice to make masks optional. There is a growing coalition of parents that are well-researched, educated, and keenly motivated to ensure school boards uphold their duties.
I just want to remind you, you've reached your 3-minute limit. Are you almost complete?
Yes, this won't be the last you hear from us.
Thank you for your comment.
The next comment is from a citizen who requested reasonable accommodations to provide comment due to a medical condition. So I will be reading this comment. It is from Wes Opus, a citizen. And I will set the timer for myself as I read this. Good evening, members of the District 34 Board. Let me start by thanking your Inclusivity Coordinator, Kathy Kajigian, for providing accommodations that allowed my comments an opportunity to be heard. I'd like to focus on inclusivity and diversity tonight. My daughter will be entering first grade at Henking Elementary. She has never attended a public school and had previously been homeschooled. She will be entering a world completely alien to her. She has never been subjected to arbitrary and constantly changing guidance, required to wear a mask or stay a certain distance away from her friends or homeschool podmates. She and I both have concerns that wearing a mask causes her anxiety and adversely affects her ability to breathe while wearing one. She is not prepared or able to wear a mask for the amount of time the district demands. She is upset at the idea of constantly having to stay away from her potential friends and doesn't understand how she will play if she can't be near others. I don't want to subject my daughter to this type of environment, and I can't imagine most parents would want to subject their children to an uncomfortable and possibly unhealthy environment like that either. District 34 strives to provide a learning environment rich in diversity. This should include diversity of thought. Many parents, including myself, believe that the choice to wear a mask, which is considered to be a medical device, or have their children wear one, should be left solely up to the parents. I implore this board to be respectful of our diversity of thought and remember that despite the new emergency order issued earlier this month, the power to set policy still lies in your hands alone. You are not bound by this current unenforceable order, and a recommendation is not the same as a requirement. Please provide a welcoming and inclusive learning environment for my daughter and every child in the district by allowing a mask-optional environment free of discrimination from staff and students that may not share the same opinions. If the district is unable to accommodate a mask-optional school environment, I request that a virtual or home learning option be made available for those children unable to wear a mask to maintain an inclusive learning environment until the mitigation guidance changes to allow unrestricted in-person learning. Thank you for your time tonight and maintaining your commitment to inclusivity and diversity.
Thank you. And you finished under 3 minutes, that was pretty good.
Next is Theodora Bogdan.
Hello, good evening. I just want to point out that I myself am having a hard time breathing with a mask on, as well as a lot of the speakers that I've heard last week have been taking deep breaths. So that's, I think everybody should observe that. And if kids are forced to do this 9 hours a day, like myself right now, just staying here 1 hour, it's very hard. So mandates or no mandates, we have to look at the science first and look at the mandates, which are not legal laws right now first. So I made a big speech, and I'm not going to go through it just because of the fact that I've been looking, listening, and watching. So I just want to point out what I've been seeing. Yes, Ms. Patel has pointed out the legalities of the issue, and yes, they stand clear, absolutely. And yes, I also agree, and I would hope that you guys decide for the best interest of the children that maybe you should take into consideration that those parents that would like to have an option online for the kids that are not able to withstand a mask all day long, have that option. I know District 54, along with many other districts, are given that option. And I feel like we are not a cookie cutter society. Not every person is able to adhere to this, or because of medical issues. So just myself, I feel now, I cannot breathe. I understand it's hard for everyone, and it is, but we have to think about what's best in the interest of the children, for their development, for their education. You're right, they have to be in person, but you know what, for the children that cannot withstand these masks, from anxiety, from asthma, from allergies. My daughter has allergies. My daughter also has a panic attack when she's holding this mask in the store for a half an hour. These kids are under the age of 10. They are not able to get vaccinated like many of the children that are older. And if this is the case, how can you imagine for them to concentrate in school while having to deal with breathing problems? This is a big issue. This is a health issue. And I think based on the science, where they're saying that the kids are not affected like the adults, you have to take that into consideration. This is something that You cannot make it mandatory for everybody if it's not possible. This is, I think, a legality issue as well, besides a medical issue. So I do want to have you guys take into consideration this aspect, along with the fact that everybody should make their choices for their children. Mr. Governor Pritzker is not, he's mandating, he's not a law. So I ask for you guys tonight that you do stand up for our children first and make it what each family, what works for each family, not just what you guys think it works for one for all. Thank you.
Next is Joanna Drusdala. Did I say that right?
Hello, my name is Joanna Drusdala. I just want to ask one question. All people here that think that masks are protecting you from COVID, how would you feel if someone would force you right now to take your mask off? Just imagine, because this is how we feel right now. We are forced to do something bad for our own innocent children. Something that we know it is harmful and not protecting. My child was forced last spring here in Glenview to run outside with the mask on when there was hot outside. She still remembers that. My child always has runny nose when wearing a mask. The mask is all wet and dirty from dust. The skin is irritating. My friend's daughter, through the last school year, kept getting nosebleeds, and she didn't know why this was happening. After taking her to doctor, the doctor determined it was happening because of mask wearing for so many hours. Her little nose was not getting enough oxygen and breathing in and out the air underneath the mask, drying out her nose vessels, causing them to bleed. What is good for one person, it may not be good for another. I am the mother and I know what is good for my children. Therefore, we are demanding optional masks and freedom for our children, nothing else. I hope you are thinking, you are checking the facts, and you listen to all of us. We trust you. And I hope as you already changed the policy for no mask outside for upcoming school year, you would also change the policy for optional masks inside as well. We demand respect for personal choices and optional masks, not mandatory. Thank you very much.
Next is Karina Trapp.
Hi, my name is Karina Trapp. I've got 2 children in District 34, one here at Westbrook and one at Atia. Regardless of what Mr. Corman said earlier, guidance is not law and mandates are not law. We've been given the ability to decide what is best for each school. I support the parents' choice to decide what is best for their children. No one knows or loves the child more than the parents. My son played on the same baseball team as the children of one of the members of the board. When the league dropped the mask requirement for kids playing baseball earlier this summer, this board member and his children still continued to wear masks, even after everyone else chose not to. That was their right, and I support it 1,000%. Why? Because they are his children, and he, as a parent, knows what is best for them. The same is true for every parent in this district. And just as they have the right to decide what was best for their children, this board should not take that right and discretion away from the parents. That being said, I bring back the concern that I raised at the last board meeting regarding the equity editorial sent out by the Equity Ambassadors Club at Atia. Many parents may not be aware of it. Why? because it was emailed directly to the students without any prior notice to the parents. I believe strongly that any information dealing with gender, sexuality, race, and controversial political topics needs to be shared with parents and receive their approval prior to reaching the students. I do not need the Equity Ambassadors Club telling my child to go online to learn how to pronounce neopronouns. I reached out to Principal Mark Richter, and he did acknowledge that in retrospect, they should have given more consideration to all the student, all student push out, his words, and that going forward, the group would establish a way to share their work on a more opt-in basis. I believe another issue of the editorial has gone out since. Yet, as a parent, I have not been given any information about opting my child in or out from receiving the editorial. The school does a disservice to the students and the community when they cut the parents out of the equation. I'm here to remind you that I am not sending my children to school because I want to co-parent with the board, teachers, or the principal, and especially not another 12-year-old who gets their information from TikTok and Instagram. We need to step away from teaching our kids to focus on socialist ideals and teach them to think critically about the world around them. This is not done by presenting one-sided information and then when a student has the insight to ask if it could possibly be biased, answer is no, of course not, as my daughter's gifted language arts teacher told the class. As much as I hated remote learning for my kids, it opened my eyes to what is going on in the classroom. Schools need to focus on teaching our children reading, writing, arithmetic, and leave the child rearing to the parents. Thank you.
Mark Trapp.
Hi everybody, I'm Mark Trapp. I have 5 kids. We lived in Glenview for some time now, and I guess I'll come right out and say it. I hate that I have to be here. I hate that I have to be here because I guess I'm just a regular dad and I just want to work and pay my taxes and live and raise my children the way that I see fit. And I assume that the school board and the teachers are on board with all of that. And when I find out that they're not, it's annoying. And I've been finding out that they're not in many ways recently. I may come across more disrespectful than I intend.
I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't.
Well, I'll try my best to...
Well, we're giving you the same respect as you.
Oh, sure, I'm good. Well, I'm giving you respect too. I guess maybe I'm trying to make a joke, so I guess that's just how it goes. But I'll take my time and say what I like to say. And like I said, I don't want to be here, and so I may come across a little annoyed with it because I am a little annoyed. And I guess to some degree I'll apologize for that. But it's kind of, I wasn't even planning on speaking, but I sat here and took down some notes about what was going on, and it just makes me shake my head. I heard some talk about the success of what we are doing, and somebody talked about the successful school year last year. And I don't know what planet you were living on, but last year was not a successful school year by any degree of imagination. I know that you worked hard, and I get it. Everybody worked hard. And I heard the gentleman over here, give everybody a pat on the back, and maybe you deserved it. I think we all deserved it. We had a rough time. Nobody here had it any harder than I did, or than anybody else did. And it's just sort of galling to see everybody get together and plan about what they're going to make your kid do, and then pat yourselves on the back like you're some kind of geniuses. Stick with the basics. Stick with reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that's it. And when you get that right, maybe you can solve all the rest of the world's problems. But until you get that right, stick with that, and only that. I grew up in an America that had laws that were passed by legislatures and then signed into law. I've been hearing talk all night about mandates and guidance and recommendations. It even said on one of the slides before the power went out, recommendations of state public health agencies. Since when are we governed into the minutest details of our lives by mandates? What the heck is a mandate? When did that come about? When did the CDC get the power to mandate that my kid wear something on their face during the school day. Who put the CDC in charge of any of this stuff? I know I didn't. And
Thank you for your comments. It's 3 minutes.
okay, well, I'll just say this. You need a reminder that we're the principal, you're the agent. You act with the authorization that we give you. And when you exceed the scope of that authorization, there's going to be some pushback. And this is just the beginning of it.
And the final comment is from Afshan Kadir. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Hello everyone, my name is Akshan and my one kid goes to, will be going to the grade 2 in Westbrook, and my other twin boys will be 3 years and they will be going to the early childhood. And I just want to address one point. Due to the increase in Delta variant and mostly affecting the pediatrics, I would request the board and the district to have the parents the choice of remote school. Since the younger kids are not eligible for the vaccine, I'm not feeling comfortable and safe sending the kids to school, and I won't be sending my kids to school until they are eligible for the vaccine. So I request the board and the district to allow the option of remote learning, at least for the first quarter. I just want to address that. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. Kathy, do we have any more comments?
Right.
All right. We're going to be moving out of the public hearing session and into our regular meeting right now. And it's going to bring us to the approval section. First, we have to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Natalie. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we were going to go to the approval of the June 21st regular and executive session minutes and the July 8th, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion and a second to approve the board meeting minutes?
I motion. Joel.
Second.
This is a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Now we'll move to the communications section, and this is the superintendent comment.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to yield my time to Kathy, who has some thought exchange, but also would like to share about this on a broad level.
Thank you. We are at a new meeting. I had in the previous meeting referred to some of the survey results that we had heard when we reached out to our community late spring and over the summer, and I wanted to share a little bit about those results and the process that we used to have community conversations. We have partnered with Thought Exchange, which is a company that creates surveys and conversations with communities to get real community engagement and true community input, where participants in these exchanges share ideas and rate each other's responses. We get to see common themes arise, and we see differing perspectives, ideas that resonate with participants in surveys and those that don't resonate. It's just as important to see what rises to the top as what doesn't. This tool also allows multilingual capabilities that are pretty rich and allows all community members to participate in their home language. The first question we asked at the end of the school year of staff and families was, as a district, what have we done well in the past year that we should continue doing? And what can we do together to make next year successful for students, staff, and families? And you can bet that we looked at this data, the leadership team in buildings as well, in our planning for that opening plan. We had 693 families participate. They shared 871 thoughts and rated 17,000, gave 17,000, almost 18,000 ratings. 277 staff participated. They provided 315 thoughts and almost 12,000 ratings. The key thoughts of families, the #1 rated thought was that hiring teachers who care about the students and their educational goals. It helps children thrive. And as someone who was lucky enough to be at New Educator Orientation yesterday and today, I can say that we are hiring teachers who care about students. It was great to be in the room with our new educators the past couple of days. Another key thought that resonated was listening to board meetings live and considering live stream in the future. So here we are. The key thoughts from staff was staffing and hiring, particularly of associates, and giving kudos to the amazing associates who support staff and students in the classrooms. Teacher voices need to be heard and taken into account in decision making, and keeping student and staff health and well-being the top priority. That was a key staff thought. The tool allows us to see not just the most common themes, but the themes that resonate the most, that are rated the highest. So there were 5 total thoughts on Zoom conferences for parents, but those were really highly rated by those who reviewed the thoughts of others. Zoom conferences, which offers more flexibility and better parental response. Smaller class sizes was a theme that was highly rated. Comments with time and day, and health and safety. For families, again, a high-rated thought was about virtual board meetings. So again, here we are streaming our virtual board meetings thanks to that input from our community members. A key thought from both families and staff, communication, as I shared in the opening plan presentation, that communication is important to our staff and our families, and making sure we are transparent, clear, asking for parent feedback, and social emotional issues were common themes that were shared in that survey. One thing that we can see, which I think is pretty important, is where we have differences in opinion, like we heard tonight, that people fall on either side of the mask issue. But to see that, yes, there are differences of opinion, but there are also commonalities, and that helps us as a community look for the commonalities. As we know there are differences, but where can we come together, and where can we focus in communication and community engagement on those common areas? In July, we looked forward as we prepare for a new school year with new schedules and new learning opportunities, as we shared. What does the district need to consider to support staff, students, and families in adjusting to the changes? This was a survey to staff and families together. The previous was split out, one for staff and one for families. And we had over 1,300 participants, over 1,000 thoughts, and over 46,000 ratings. So people were very engaged in providing feedback to the district. The #1 thought was, let's make sure our younger kids spend less time on screens during school and more time interacting with peers and teachers. And that also goes back to that social emotional learning topic. Prioritizing 100% in-person learning and communicating changes. So there's some consistency there. There were several comments about Late Start Wednesday, some concerns about its impact, especially on working parents and inconsistent schedules. This shows what resonates. Talking about consistency, working parents, schedules. You can see that kindergarten's a big topic. So some concerns and some excitement from our kindergarten parents about what's ahead this year. And again, the working parents and mask mandates, we again see where the differences are and where the commonalities are. Protocols are clear and concise, and scheduling are the commonalities. We also were able to do a live exchange, and that's something that you may see in community meetings, or buildings will see in staff meetings, where we can conduct exchanges live. And we had a leadership meeting where we conducted live exchanges of our principals, assistant principals, and other building leaders to talk about what the challenges they're going to face this year and what are the exciting opportunities. And as cabinet, we will look at those to see where we need to make sure that we're supporting our building leaders to be successful this year. And challenges were the themes. Lunch is a big one. That is one of the biggest challenges that our building leaders are looking to solve, and they're working through that. And enforcement of making sure that their buildings are a safe place. And their excitement is building relationships. So that's exactly where it should be. Building relationships, supporting kids, and working with new staff who are coming in. Again, logistics of staffing and lunch and shield testing. They're really working hard on that. And the overall social and emotional well-being of everyone is a priority for our building leaders. And consistent, safe operations. Seeing students and supporting their growth, supporting kids, and building new relationships. So that is what Thought Exchange is. I welcome any comments you have about the tool or about the survey results.
Does anyone want to ask Kathy any questions?
I'll just say I think the tool is amazing, and I love to see the intersections, and it's great the way it's broken out, and it's really informative, useful for us to hear as a board, and I'm sure for the admin team. So thank you for presenting all that. We can see as people get into the habit of participating in those, that we'll get even more and more participation and more valuable input from the community.
Does it allow you to make more targeted communication that is more valuable to the community by using this tool?
Yes, absolutely. I look at the results in terms of, making sure that we're communicating effectively, that we're addressing what we learned from these, and where we communicate and how we communicate. Those are some things that we expect to learn from the survey.
Were you asking about creating specific kinds of questions and finding out those intersections?
No, not necessarily. I just the feedback can generate how you respond, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, this is more of a two-way communication tool that we haven't had before, correct?
Correct.
Any other thoughts or questions? All right, Dr. Deli, is it in the communications section? It does, thank you. All right, we're moving to section E, consideration of resolutions. This is on the consent agenda. We have 2191, the personnel report, 2192, the approval of payroll warrants, 2193, the approval of vendor warrants, and 2194, master agreement with Hygineering. Is there anybody who has any questions really quick? No? Can I ask for a motion or a second for approval?
Second.
Natalie was first. All right, and this is a roll call vote, Katie?
Stefani? Aye. Dolan?
Aye.
Bonstar?
Aye.
Corman?
Aye.
Peggy?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Jeff Horowitz? Aye.
The motion is passed. Thank you. Now we move to consideration of other resolutions. I'm going to go through these one at a time because we're going to vote on them one at a time, and then we can have discussion at the same time. We'll start with 2195, the resolution to authorize interest funds. Does anyone have any questions for Eric? Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
Motion, Dolan.
Second. Bonstar.
All right, can we have a roll call vote, Katie?
Stefani? Bonstar?
Aye.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy. Nelson.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
All right, resolution passes. Now we move to 2196, the resolution to approve the 2021-2022 reopening plan that we just had presented tonight. Does anyone have any further questions? Can I have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
And could we have another roll call vote?
Stefani.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
The resolution passes. Now we move to 2197, the GEA Memo of Understanding - Sick Bank. Does anyone have any questions about that resolution? May I have a motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
John Hagee's motion.
Second.
Diane, second. And we'll have another roll call vote.
Stefani.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Motion, resolution passes. Now we have 2198, Thought Exchange Contract. Does anyone have any questions about the contract? We saw the presentation. Is there any questions?
I only have one question. How active or how often are we anticipating using this tool going forward to kind of think about quantifying the $20,000 of insight that we're going to be translating that to?
Frequently. We are, I'm working on developing a whole survey plan for the year that includes teaching and learning topics, that includes help for our new building principals. Megan Russell at Springman already has a plan to use the tool to help her get to learn her community and her building. Construction, full day kindergarten, that is going to be, we'll have several exchanges in our planning for full day kindergarten throughout the year. So we do have a plan, and Thought Exchange also provides some suggestions for the cadence of surveys as well, so we'll be following that.
So it's kind of an unrestricted total number of surveys, it's not limited by the contract?
Not at all.
That was my only question, if we had a limit to the number of surveys.
I've never met a survey I don't like, so you can expect to see one. You want to do one now?
A live survey.
I think voting is kind of a survey.
And is this replacing any survey tools that we're currently using at all, like is there any savings embedded in doing this?
No, we use SurveyMonkey occasionally. We probably will still continue to do that, but if we don't, it's a minimal savings there, and Google Forms is free.
Any other thoughts? All right, can I get a motion and a second to approve the contract?
So moved.
Second, Dolan.
And a roll call vote.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving to 2199, the GPA Memo of Understanding Agreement Extension. Any questions about the MOU, whatever, MOU? Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say since you were involved?
It was great working with everybody. I'm looking forward to getting forward to a 4-year contract or a 3-year contract next time, but I think it's a strong contract, and I think it's great for all of the associates and everyone that's covered.
Thank you for your work, Scott. I know it's a significant time commitment, and we all as a board thank you because only one person does that, so you represented all of us in that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks. Is there a motion and a second to approve it?
So moved. Second.
And a roll call vote.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
All right, the resolution passes. And now this is our last resolution in this section, 21-100, the change order resolution. there any questions about this right now? Do you have anything, Mike?
Do you want me to mention what I brought up today? Just a little. Okay. So I've asked Dane to take a look at, in partnership with Scott and the staff, to if we hit certain gates, call it say $100,000, if something exceeds $100,000, there should be some sort of notification, maybe to John and I as the construction subcommittee, but just have some kind of governance around expenditures over $100,000. Understanding that change orders do happen. But I just was hoping to get, just a little more clarity on, I wouldn't want someone, and I don't think Steve would do this, but I don't want someone to be able to say, well, I could do $95,000 change orders. I'm trying to avoid any kind of thing like that, just so we have clarity as stewards of the community's funds. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
Just one quick question. How did we pick 100 as a sort of a quote-unquote second authority relative to the 10?
When you look at the cash flow statements that the construction managers gave us, and you look at the types of dollars that we're spending each month and the types of issues that would come up, in conversation with the attorney and the construction manager, it seemed like the right amount so that Steve could kind of keep things moving without slowing down for saving a day.
Yeah, we definitely are on a tight schedule, so I mean, it does help to be able to have trusted individuals such as Steve.
Well, and I would add that this is the time when those expenditures are in those large chunks of money, when you're digging into the ground, when you're adding walls, when you're finding unforeseen conditions. So I get the need, but I just wanted to make sure we had some governance behind it.
Yeah, I'm hearing some communication links about when and if these things happen, and as they're happening, that people are aware.
That sounds good. Can I get a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved, Mike Carl.
Second, Thomas Kerr.
And a roll call vote.
Dolan.
Aye.
Jack Torowitz.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Tom Stark.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye. All right, we're moving to section G, discussion section. And we're going to start with the health and dental renewal rates for 2022, Eric.
Great, thank you. So, we're in a unique position for the most part in that our district is just big enough to have a self-funded program, a healthcare program. We've been in that position for some time now. To help manage the program, we employ Gallagher. For administration, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and to help improve our program offering, the D34 compensation committee, or the subcommittee that deals with insurance. Discussions over the past year have included trend, utilization report review, and potential changes moving forward, along with continuing to explore additional plans and additions to our wellness policy, or offers. We reviewed the plans, including prescriptions this year in particular. We met with Blue Cross to look at ways we could reduce the cost. And when we took a look at our prescription offering from PPO and HMO, we realized that there was a disconnect. And what we dug into in a very deep fashion over a number of months was how can we mirror the prescription plan that is associated with HMO with the PPO plan. And that PPO is really the self-funded portion. So with relatively low impact to the staff, we were able to realize some changes to that RX program that will help reduce costs both to the employee and to the board. And so as always, we take a look, or we employ Gallagher to take a look at a 24-month trend, and when you sort of put it all together and you try and anticipate what our claims would be next year, taking into factors such as, many people didn't go to the doctor over the last 18 months, and are they going to, sort of make those doctor's appointments moving forward? So we asked the analyst for his recommendation to try and bridge that gap between what we think the claims are going to be and what the premium equivalent is going to be. And so with all that, the recommendation as it stands tonight from the committee is that for the calendar year 2022, PPO plans have a 2% increase, which accounts for this RX change. It would have been over 7% had we not made that change. HMO plans, unfortunately, ran a little bit higher, and the increase for the premiums on HMO plans are 8%, and then also for dental plans, saw a little bit higher of a trend, and we'll make a recommendation for a 5.2% increase for 2022. So the board will make a vote, and then this change will sort of get socialized amongst the staff during open enrollment for that final change to happen January 1 of 2022.
Any questions for Eric?
Just a quick question, the 2%, 8%, how do those numbers compare again to the slide right before it? Like, it said something about HMO experience was up 15%, but we're only, first of all, the HMO is not self-funded, right? That's fully insured.
Correct.
Okay. So does that, what's the budget?
It's a combination of, there's weighted averages, right, there's more weight given to the last 12 versus the prior 12 months. And then it's a combination of history and thinking about the future. Like I said, the analyst says, listen, in some ways you were down with use overall. And you're seeing that across the board, but as things get better to some degree, vaccinations are out, people are visiting the doctor more, and so I think some of the thinking is that it might pick up just a little bit. So that's why you saw that original recommendation of 7.4 for PPO and 8% for HMO. We'll only be able to bring it down to 2 because of these RX changes.
So is there a difference between the contribution for the HMO and what the actual premium is? Is there like some subsidization that happens there, or is the premium that is being charged to employees equal to what?
That's what you're hoping for. That's what you're trying to do now, to maintain a fund balance, if you will, in our health trust. And so
HMO, this is about HMO. I understand.
right, no, correct, not for HMO.
My question is more about the HMO. I understand the PPO you're trying to target. You don't know if you're going to hit it, you hope you do, and all that.
Yeah.
So my question is, the HMO is what we're charging equal to what we're paying the insurance company?
Yes.
Okay.
Was
So the 8% is just like the insurance company says, here it is, and that's what the number is. That's why we're recommending 8% for the HMO.
correct.
PPO requires all the
You're setting aside the funds, you're waiting for the claims to come in, and you're paying them as they come in.
What's the split roughly on HMO versus PPO? I should remember this, but.
How many staff do we have?
Yeah. 90-10, 50-50, I'm just trying to get a sense.
I don't have that information. It's more in the 50-50 range, but you can't hold me that.
That's fine.
Well, I do this for my own, you know, and these are pretty good premium increases. I just, like, we got fully insured PPOs, and what we were seeing across the board was like double digits. So the fact that we can do a PPO here for low single digits feels like a success. That's what I think that based on.
I do want to commend Eric and the compensation committee for being creative with the RX.
Yeah.
That was really great.
Were there any other changes to like the formulary plan, or was there any input from like a fraud, waste, and abuse analysis that informed like the prescription design and structure to any of the benefits?
Yes, to some degree. So, you know, there's a long list, and I can forward that to the board of the changes that happened under this RX change, but there is going to be a series of things, but like, if I'm saying it right, if you're on a brand name drug and there's a generic drug, let's pause, let's have Blue Cross intervene and ask for a phone call to see if we can make the generic, things like that. But there's a list of about 10 different changes that we can.
I would like to see some of those proposed changes if I'm sure others are, so
Yeah.
it's okay, Scott.
Sure. It's an email right there.
Yeah.
So we'll be voting on this another time, right?
Say that.
We'll be voting on this at a different time.
Yes, it'll be on the next one.
All right, why don't we move to the final fiscal year 22 budget? Eric again.
You got me 2 times tonight. Okay, so,
Oh, no.
for the past several months, as you know, we've been discussing the budget development for FY22. We presented a tentative budget in May, and then again in June, and now we've had time to let that tentative budget continue to develop. And what you see tonight is our final budget presentation. Here we see the FY22 summary with total revenues of $146 million, total expenses of $149 million, and a bar chart by fund. We have 9 funds, and each fund is shown here with revenue compared to expense. Typically, most of the funding flows in and out of the general or the education fund. You also see this year, similar to last year, we have high revenues at $59 million and expenses of $60 million running through the capital projects fund for ongoing construction. Here we're looking at local revenue assumptions with updates in red all the way to the right since we presented the tentative budget. And based on the push to get all students back in the building for learning, we've increased the expected FY22 student fee revenue in the amount of $230,000. Here we're showing state and federal revenues, and since May when the tentative was released, we increased the evidence-based funding by almost $150,000, transportation reimbursement by $400,000, federal funding by $600,000, and now we're expecting $250,000 from FEMA or IEMA, and that's a pretty good number. Just to give you some context, it's the highest number I've heard of any of the surrounding districts, and we've been on it all year working with them, and I think that's going to come to fruition in FY22. So that's good. Here's showing expense assumptions. Again, changes in red to the far right column. Minor changes in staffing, purchase services, and transportation expenses. But of note is the settlement of the one-year support staff union agreement. The final budget was based on a 4.6% increase overall to support staff salaries, which includes some structural improvements to support staff compensation, but will cost the board approximately $80,000 more than what was in this budget. Also note that the union agreed to some very responsible changes that we just discussed in terms of our RX and the health benefit offering. Here, we're showing a snapshot of all the funds, final FY22 all the way to the right. We're showing all funds, we include bonded interest, capital projects, and health life safety. The total deficit at $2.9 million. When you take those 3 funds out, just showing our operating funds, finally we're showing a deficit of 1.9 million, just under 2 million for FY22. And if all these estimates came to fruition, going back to the CFAC fund balance chart, with green being in the safe zone, yellow sort of in the caution, and red in danger. At the end of FY22, if all this came out to be true, we'd see a 63% operating fund balance as a percentage of expenses. So still hovering just in that green. Again, monitoring this, watching to see what happens with the Glen TIF. The preliminary tax report that just came out for 2020 shows EAV in our boundary going down 1%. So that obviously affects the TIF. It's a small decline. We'll keep watching that and see how it plays out in the next year, 2 years before we end up adopting a levy that would include that TIF. Highlights include the resources are aligned to our strategic goals for the year. Operating expenditures still outpacing revenues. Final budget includes the GPA settlement for a 1-year extension. $60 million in estimated construction costs for this fiscal year. This budget includes federal funding from ESSER 2 and 3 in the amount of $1.9 million. And this budget includes the first bond and interest tax levy increase due to the referendum at 265%.
Eric, do you have these slides?
You don't have these slides yet, they'll be posted tomorrow.
Does anyone have any questions about the final budget?
We're getting awfully close to the yellow.
We are. I would like to
Point out the obvious.
Yeah, but fiscal year 21 projected a $2.9 million deficit, I believe.
You said 21?
Yes.
3.3 is what we.
Yeah, 3.3. And we didn't do it, right?
No, that's the next presentation.
No, sorry. I'm just trying to carry over that.
You're right.
It's
all part of the mosaic.
Yes. It's a budget that you're going to meet, hopefully.
That's all.
You're stealing thunder. Actually, I have a question on the down. Can you go back to that slide number? Natalie just asked. If I read those percentages right, it drops from 69 to 63.
That's right.
So
Your expenses increase, right? So expenses are growing, what, 4 million?
Well, because she was including just the operating expenses, not the full expenses,
This
right?
is everything?
This is everything, right? The fund balance covers everything.
This is just in the operating fund. Because.
Oh, yeah. That's-
You know, I don't want to confuse things, talking about capital projects, health, life, safety, or bond and interest. So that's why we typically just look at our operating fund balance. That's the way the state looks at it as well when they do their financial profiles.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little confused now. So the 20 million that we had allocated for construction from within the fund balance, is that included in this number?
Yes.
And we had discussed pushing that to the back end of the project.
That's right.
But we're still seeing a pretty significant, it looks significant, go from the middle of the green down to almost the yellow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've been adopting, and as you'll see, are showing deficits still. So.
No, I know we have a deficit, I'm just wondering why the fund balance is showing a negative trend when we said we, so I guess this is accommodating the fund balance.
This is the product.
This is a product, if we don't do better. That's
If
what
we don't wind up spending it, this trend line,
There's,
assuming a bunch of other things come together, it would look different.
as CFAC pointed out, we have a structural operating deficit.
Right.
That is showing up in that fund balance discussion every year when we take a budget.
Okay. Yeah, and this is still based on budget, so we're estimating expenses probably higher than they will be for many different reasons. And so I think, you know, yeah, so I'll contribute back.
So I feel like maybe I picked this off by saying we're close to yellow. But what I know about Eric is we might be budgeted at one thing, but we're gonna end up somewhere else. Because you sort of look at, you have a conservative view on things, so you'd rather look at what, the, not worst case scenario, but more, right, I'm trying to paraphrase.
No,
So
you're right.
This isn't necessarily where we're gonna end up, because you like to build in a cushion so that we can get to where we need to be.
That and you don't want to exceed your budgeted expenses. If you do, you really should amend your budget. And so to avoid potentially amending the budget, we include expenses we think could come to fruition. And if they don't, great. But if they do, we can avoid having to go through a hearing again and exceed expenses that were budgeted in any one particular fund. We try and avoid that.
And I will recall the CFAC presentation did get us very closer into the yellow by the time construction was over. So, you know, we have to address the structural operating deficit as time goes by.
That doesn't preclude though, you know, that, I guess, Natalie, your point, to the extent that that trend line continues into the yellow and, you know, beyond, it doesn't preclude conversations about what we stand ready to do to right-size that trend line. So these aren't just assumptions that we're heading in this direction. It's all based on projections, and there are interventions that we can all talk about as we continue to track that line.
That's right. That's why I say we wait for the 2022 tax levy where we include the TIF. We'll see what the EAV is. We'll see what that additional revenue looks like. And that's a good time when you pretty much know what your trajectory is going to look like. And that's the time you can say, we want to intervene.
Yeah, once you finally get the levy for the TIF, you'll have much stronger ideas on the fund balance and budgeting going forward.
Exactly.
Right now, it's still a lot of speculation even involved with that. As you pointed out, there's a 1% lowering of the EAV.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had any conversations, Eric, with the village about, say, Drake Fest or any of these other construction projects on Waukegan Road? They've got some new houses going up. In terms of that, are they seeing anything that looks as an anomaly in terms of the number of families moving into the district?
So I haven't had those conversations yet, but we're getting ready to because we're going to begin to prepare work with, obviously, the phase 2 on construction. We'll go out for another bond issue, maybe hopefully sooner than later because rates are looking good. And so we're about to start those conversations with the village. We'll probably have to go to Moody's again, and we'll get a refresh on what developments out there and what things look like.
So whenever that comes, I just want that to be part of the conversation, just so we can kind of keep our finger on that pulse.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Why don't we move to the unaudited fiscal year 21 financials? Eric.
Thank you. So we just heard about 22. What really helped inform 22 was the way this year ended 21. And so let's take a look here. So in September of 2020, the board approved the FY21 budget, which showed operating revenues of $75.6 million. But we ended the year with a $73.9 million, resulting in a $1.7 million variance, or 2.3% less than budget. And so on the screen, we've broken down the variance by funds that contributed most to the variance, which was Ed, O&M, and Trans. And what I'd like to do is highlight a shortfall in property taxes of $2.4 million just in these funds alone. This was an anomaly. Our collections were lower than they have been, different from our neighbors, and I think there's a variety of sort of factors that contribute, that are sort of behind the scenes, of which I can't possibly articulate as well as the county could, but that's something we're going to keep our eye on. Typically, what you don't get in the spring, you would get in the fall, so I'm hopeful that we'll actually see a little bit more in the fall installment than we typically do, making up for that balance. Also, the tip make-whole payment was less than we had budgeted, as well as the student fees, and that's, I think, for obvious reasons. All while we received additional revenue in other areas such as interest and certainly federal dollars, particularly from ESSER funds. When we compare budgeted expenses to actual, most funds came in under budget, resulting in a year-end expense. The difference, rather, about $3.9 million, which is 5% less than budget. Here we're breaking down that variance again, mostly from Ed, Trans, and O&M. For the $3.9 million, 1.6 of the $2 million variance is from the Ed fund, and that was strictly based on the loan that we had anticipated from O&M and the timing of the bond issue, and when payments came in, we just didn't need that money. So that equates to that's the 1.6 million. And in addition, unfilled positions, suspension of in-person learning, all help with the positive variance for things like energy costs, transportation associated with field trips and things like that. So yes, this is in part some of what we typically underutilize, but also based on suspension of in-person learning, we saw some additional savings. Here we brought in all funds, which includes bond and interest, capital projects, and life safety. We compare actual revenues to actual expenses. We see a $48 million surplus, and that has to do with the sale of the bonds. If you remove the bond sale, there's an $11.7 million deficit. We originally budgeted a $13.4 million surplus, rather. So change there based on the fact that primarily we budgeted for a $40 million bond issue. We ended up with a $60 million bond issue. Here we're looking at,
I think you were talking.
I think I was too. Sorry about that. So, see, operating, my apologies. Operating. I'm getting confused. Here's the all funds. I spoke to all funds, but I wanted to speak to operating funds. Here we're showing what we budgeted 73.9. I'm sorry, actual revenues, actual operating revenues compared to actual operating expenses. So 73.9 in revenues, 75 million in expenses, resulted in a $1.2 million deficit. This is compared to the 3.3 that the board adopted in the budget. So 1.6%, not bad when you think all things considered. Highlights, operating revenues came in 2.3% under estimates. Operating expenses 5% under estimates. operating deficit 1.1 million, 1.6% of expenses, and we came in with an operating fund balance of 69%. So for this FY21 year, still staying in the green in a sort of healthy way, but we'll see 22 and we'll see if we can stay up in the green as long as we possibly can.
With the original budget, what was the operating, do you know what the percent of the operating fund budget was projected to be?
The 3.3 million.
We were below 69, correct?
I don't know on a percentage basis.
I mean,
we projected to be, yeah, for sure.
Closer to 65.
Probably.
That's a good start.
I don't know that I can take credit for that. I do think it's the result of the year, but we'll take it.
Any other questions for Eric about the unaudited 21 financials? Let's move to number 4, board policy issue 107, first read. Dr. Dillon.
I don't have anything in particular to highlight. Many of these are more perfunctory changes, wordsmithing, references.
Just want to point out something minor, and I actually mentioned this to Katie already. Policy 510 still has Dr. Hopkins listed.
Thank you. We need to make that change. It'll be changed to Mary Garrity. Thank you, Mary.
And then it will be
Redesignated to Mary Garrity's successor,
which we don't want to have to think about, but that'll be our next
5 years on.
Great.
Thank you. Anybody else have any input? All right. We'll move to the number 5, following meeting agenda. Any questions or thoughts about it? Okay. This is now moving to audience comments. This is a second opportunity for audience comments. Kathy, do we have any comments?
We have one.
Okay. This is a second opportunity for audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card and give it to the Director of Communications. The Director will call community members to submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship to the district. If a community member in the overflow room, please know that the board will be taking notes and will be in listening mode only. And an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We also ask that you submit one comment per opportunity. And Kathy, who do we have?
Karen Hui.
Hi, my name is Karen Hui. I have a parent of a child, 2 children in Alliance. I appreciate your time and humoring me again. Please allow me to belabor the point of remote learning action. Last year was a success. My family stayed healthy. We thrived. My children learned and were happy. But it was also the hardest year of my entire life. It challenged us to grow as a family, and we met that challenge. We don't ask for remote thinking that it's going to be fun or easy. We know what we're getting into. We ask out of fear for our children's health. I trust that this board has a well-thought-out plan that I heard tonight, and I think you can obviously consulted experts and have a very judicious plan. You also talked about a lot of numbers, and I know that the safest place for my children will be remote until vaccination, and let me tell you the numbers that I, as a parent, am looking at. This is from an article posted in NIH by Helen Thomas, and I'm happy to provide this if needed. And this is just going to be a couple of excerpts from it. Evidence from the first study of long COVID in children suggests that more than half of children aged between 6 and 16 years old who contacted the virus had at least one symptom lasting more than 120 days, with 42.6% impaired by these symptoms daily during daily activities. These interim results are based on periodic assessments of 129 children in Italy who were diagnosed with COVID between March and November 2020 at Gemelli University Hospital in Rome. The UK Office for National Statistics' latest report estimates that 12.9% of UK children aged 2 to 11 and 14.5% of children aged 2 to 16 still have symptoms 5 weeks after infection. Those are the numbers that I, as a parent, look at and am terrified about. That is why I'm here imploring you. We are not focusing on the pandemic preventing severe disease and death. I am looking at the legacy that pandemic is going to leave on my children and my community. And I implore you to please consider allowing the lack of vaccination to be included as a medical exemption in the remote learning option. And I appreciate your time again. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. We'll now move to the report section. We have number 1, the FOIA report. Number 2, the approval of disposal of surplus equipment. Number 3, the administrator and teacher salary and benefit report for 2021-2022. Number 4, the building use report. Number 5, the referendum expense report. And number 6, the phase 1 change order report. Are there any questions regarding reports? No questions? I'll move to other business. Is there any other business? If not, I'm going to move to adjournment. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.